Well, is Brazil a poor country? In this video I will give you my native perspective, because I lived here in Brazil the last 35 years. I'm a native, and I will explain to you in a few minutes if Brazil really is a poor country, and you'll understand this question, this thing very deeply in this video. Okay, stay with me until the end. So first of all, when we take the whole income of Brazil, okay, the PIB, the internal productivity of the Brazil, the total, you will get a high number, okay, trillions of dollars. But you have to see that Brazil has a lot of people here. We have over 200 million people, okay? So when you take the general numbers, you get a very high number, okay? But if you take the PIB per capita, you will get extremely low value, about $7,000 per year, okay? Okay, so in the end of the day, Brazil is a very poor country. But Brazil is a very unequal country with a lot of difference. When you travel in Brazil, you will notice that the majority of the cities, the big cities, you will see very high luxury condominiums and houses, and very, very poor houses. Okay, and why there is this inequality? Well, because Brazil is a high inflation country. That's the answer is very simple. Okay, Brazil is a very high inflation country. So what inflation does? Inflation makes the purchase power goes low and depreciates the currency. Who suffers more with inflation in every country? The poor. Yeah, okay, the poor. Because if the supermarkets goes up, the price of the food and things like this, who will suffer more? The poor, obviously. If the rent goes up, who suffers more? The poor, okay? If the transportation, the bus goes up, who suffers more? The poor, okay? So this high inflation scenario prejudices more the poor than the rich. But the rich suffers too. The middle class suffers too. So the inflation affects everybody, but every time the inflation affects more the poor than the rich. So Brazil is this environment where the poor gets even poorer, the middle class gets even poorer, and the rich, he doesn't get poor because he is rich. He has a lot of money, okay? So Brazil is a capitalist country, okay? He has rich people, as it is in all capitalist countries. But the rich suffer less with inflation. And why there is so much inflation in Brazil? Because Brazil is a populist country. It has a very old populist system. The government promised everything and never gave the opportunity to people to open business and prosper and things like this. And there is this culture of asking for more rights to the government, more money, and working for the government. And at the end of the day, this generates even more government demands, even more government expanding, and generates even more inflation. So Brazil has this chronic problem of high inflation because government always spends a lot of money. This inflation affects the poor, and if you ask anybody in Brazil and ask, oh, how was your life 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they will answer it was much better than today. Today we have a lot of technology. We can buy a lot of techno stuff, but everything is even more difficult today than it was in the past. If you want to buy a car, it's more difficult. If you want to buy a house, it's more expensive. Everything is generally more expensive than it was in the past. Okay, so as the time passes, while Brazil doesn't break this cycle of populism and high inflation, it will be even more poor, but it's not the capitalist fault. It's the government and the populism's fault. Brazil never broke this cycle in the whole history. It has been a whole century of populism. Even the militaries here took the power in the 80s, but was populism, government spending, government-oriented culture. It's not a productivity-oriented private country. Okay, we have a lot of companies here, of course, because, as I said, it's a capitalist country, 200 million people. Obviously, we have companies, but it's not a productivity-oriented economy. It's a government-oriented economy, government expanding culture, working for the government culture, not an entrepreneurship culture. So this whole problem reinforces the inflation, reinforces the scenario we see today, and makes the life of the poor here extremely difficult, because the inflation makes the food go high, everything that's basic go very high, the purchase power goes low, the minimum wage can't buy anything, you can't barely survive with the minimum wage, and that's it. That explanation, I hope, helped you understand what happens here in Brazil, why Brazil doesn't go high, goes to the first world country. That's the answer is a little bit more complex than that. Obviously, a lot of more complex than that, but this video can elucidate this thing a little bit for you that's foreign. Okay, thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe this channel, like the video. See you. Bye bye.